Welcome to Homework Lib.
When using interval notation, we use square brackets for the equal to, in parentheses if it's not included. So 180 to 240, where 180 is not included, we would use parentheses, and then just comma, and then we would go to 240, and then we would bracket because it is included. But in interval notation, we would talk about everything in between 180 and 240, but we're not including the 180, we are including the 240. X as a negative number in interval notation would be from negative infinity to 0 not included. Those would all be the negative numbers. In set builder notation would be for all x such that x is less than 0. We're not including it in either case because 0 is not negative. In interval notation, 2 included to 5 not included, or we use the union. X is greater than 8 would be from 8 not included to infinity. The domain of this graph, it goes as far left as -2 and is included even at 1 where there's a separation. 1 is part of the domain, so it will go on forever. So we would say from -2 included to infinity. The range, it goes as far low on the y-axis as 0, and even though we have this gap here, it's still picked up over on this side of the graph, so it goes on up until 4 included. So we would say from 0 included to 4 included, because everything is part of the range somewhere on this function up until that point. We want to find a formula for this function. Okay, well, we've got a quadratic. If we go left to right, we're quadratic, and it's the simple one, it's just x squared. Because 0 squared is 0, -1 squared is 1, -2 squared is 4, 1 squared is 1, but we're going from -2 included to 1 not included. And then it's just the constant 2, and that's from 1 included to infinity, or we can just say x is greater than or equal to 1. If a human's weight is a function of age, a reasonable domain for the age, the domain would be ages, and probably from 0 included, that would be like the time of birth. A reasonable, so I mean, there's not a correct answer here, but I would say maybe, I don't know, I've never really heard of many people living over 120. It's probably happened, but it's not common, but that's reasonable. The range would be the output, that would be the weight. Again, it's probably not reasonable to have an age of, or a weight of 0 like it is an age. An age of 0 would be like at the moment of birth, but a range of 0, meaning you weigh nothing, is not reasonable. You might want to, you could go as low as 0, just not including it. I mean, it's got to be something. And while there's not going to be very many less than a pound, if any, it still is maybe a possibility. It's not unreasonable to include that depending on how much of a preemie they are. And then the weight, there are people that are going to be over 300 pounds, 354. I mean, there are situations where people are 400 or 500 pounds even. There are TV shows about it, but it's all about your interpretation of reasonable here. And you can choose to include it or not. It does say I caught to use inequalities here. So this would be x's, or actually would be ages. I'm putting between 0 and 120 were my choices, and the weights 0 to 350 that was my selection.